record what is a moment of history. It's quiet. It's very still. Typically, there are protests in some of these controversial cases. When I'm out here, you hear shouting and music. It's absolutely quiet right now. In fact, I almost feel I'm speaking too loudly into the microphone. The moment is definitely. Everyone is aware of the significance of this. And the day, it's a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. Because so much will have to be outdoors, it's almost like the heavens were cooperating today. No clouds, no rain. It's perfect.
And I was reading that there were actually some people who were waiting outside before sunup even.
That's right. People have been outside here, and then, of course, the line is being assembled over onto the side of the court. So there's a line now of members of the public waiting to be able to file by the casket as she lies in repose here for the rest of the day until tonight, and then again tomorrow until 10 p.m.
Yeah, it is a beautiful day there, Jan, and the absence of the typical rancor and protesting you see outside the Supreme Court is notable. And as we see the Supreme Court police officers carrying the casket up on its final journey up those steps there, she will lie in repose on a platform that was originally built for the casket of Abraham Lincoln, which I think is an amazing detail. And we expect speeches in that private ceremony, which we'll be able to carry from Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt, as well as Chief Justice John Roberts. Jan, if we still have you, I'm curious what you expect from John Roberts this morning.
Well, again, this is something that's very bound by tradition. For example, with Justice Scalia's service, there was a brief religious message, a moment of silence, but it's not unprecedented for a justice to speak during one of these services. Justice Kagan spoke during Justice John Paul Stevens' services. Typically, it's a moment of reflection, of gratitude. Obviously, the Chief Justice will have a lot to say about her service to this country. Remember, she first appeared here at this court in 1973. That was 47 years ago when she argued her first case before the all-male Supreme Court. That's when she gave that famous quote that, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask that our brethren keep their feet off our necks. That was in 1973. She won that case, went on to win 5 more landmark discrimination cases, and then 20 years later, in 1993, President Clinton nominated her and put her on the Supreme Court, only the second woman to serve. And it really a legendary, trailblazing, path-breaking career of public service.
I know, Jan, and the more you read about her, and I've been reading every single thing, I'd watched both the documentaries last year, it's so clear she was so ahead of her time in ways that we couldn't even anticipate.
She was thinking almost 5 and 10 years down the road ahead of all of us. She framed her arguments as how gender discrimination was actually harmful to men. And that was an argument, believe it or not, Gail, that kind of resonated with the male judges that she was trying to convince. So she was able to change the law by anticipating what might come ahead of time. That is extraordinary. I mean, that is something that you can see that far down the road. And we see it in her dissents, even at the court. She makes arguments, even when she's not in the majority, that lead to changes in the law later on.
And remarkably, Jan, this was a woman, even though she ended up being first in her class at law school, had trouble getting a job. I mean, as she said, I had 3 strikes against me. 1, I was Jewish. 2, I was a woman. But the killer was I was the mother of a 4-year-old.
Right, and she said that employers just assumed that she wasn't going to want to work that hard, even though she had done a bang-up job when she clerked and worked at a law firm while she was just finishing up law school. She was shocked she didn't get a job. She said, I thought I did a great job. So, of course, that's when she helped found the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union and found a different way to make a difference.
The other thing that's so extraordinary about her is how she was able to reach across the aisle to people that had different points of view and still was able to remain friends with them, as it was with her and Justice Scalia. She said, fight for things that you care about and do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
Yeah.
And she was, of course, very close with Justice Scalia, who passed away in 2016. They became friends when they both were on the Federal Appeals Court here in D.C. They each had enormous respect for the other, their intelligence, their wit. They had grand adventures all over the world. They socialized with each other's spouses. And she said in an interview on CBS that she hoped that in her lifetime we would come to a time where people could have those relationships again, where you could be friends with people that you might disagree with strongly. It doesn't look like that wish has come true yet.
As we're watching here, as the pallbearers place the casket on what's called the Lincoln catafalque, which is actually just a simple base of rough pine boards that were nailed together and covered with a black cloth, but it was built for President Lincoln. For President Lincoln's funeral when he lay and stayed in the Capitol Rotunda back in 1865, and is used traditionally at moments like this still.
Now, we should be able to see the justices, her family. Typically, the justices will be on one side of the casket with their spouses. Friends and family stand on the other side in this very somber ceremony.
Yeah, it's a private ceremony, but it's private, but we can still see it because they're allowing us to photograph it. But it's invitation only, is what we're being told. Who was invited, Jan?
Well,
friends and family.
Her friends and family, and of course, we see all of the justices and retired Justice Anthony Kennedy. So it looks like, based on what we're seeing here, all 8 of the sitting justices, some with their spouses, are here, along with retired Justice Anthony Kennedy, and I believe that is Maureen Scalia. Standing there as well, the wife of late Justice Antonin Scalia.
Yeah, of the several ways that this is different from past ceremonies is the justices are wearing masks. It's difficult to make out everybody's identity as they move into the room here. But I believe...
and again, I mean, if you think about the aging justices on the Supreme Court, social distancing and masks is crucial. And this is for some, they haven't been going into the building. Remember, they've been having their arguments by telephone since the spring. So a moment that they're all now gathered together, this may be the first time, certainly that I'm aware of.
They've been back together. Jan,
Right.
Is it correct? My understanding is that when the public comes to pay respects over the next couple of days, the justices' law clerks will continue to stand by the casket. Is that correct?
Right, and that again is also very much bound by tradition. And remember, the members of the public will be required to socially distance and, wear the masks, all again because of special protocols that are being put in place because of the coronavirus.
It's been interesting, Jan, to see so many young girls, little girls, who looked up to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was their subject of many of their projects that they had to do, and how they've been following her life so closely. I can't imagine the message and the legacy that she has left for, listen, all women, to be honest with you, but certainly to these young girls who are looking at her.
Isn't that so true, Gil? And think about how many generations, generations of women inspired by Justice Ginsburg, who was told at the beginning of her career, no, you can't. You're a woman. You don't. Yeah. And she said, I will, and she did.
Longest serving woman on the Supreme Court for those 27 years, and you get a sense of the length of her stay by seeing how many former law clerks there are just streaming out the front of the building.
I know, they kept coming. I was like...
It's an amazing thing. Another amazing thing at this particular moment, with all of that rancor and anger surrounding this day, is that although she was known for her dissents, and many of them were fiery, and many of them were incredibly memorable, anger was not an emotion she felt served anybody.
Right, but she certainly could make her point. Her writing could be sharp. Her dissents that she would read from the bench forceful. I can think of one that leads to changes in the law.
Jan, the ceremony is about to begin. We're going to listen in.
Praise be the name of Adonai. Psalm 23. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binodeh sheyar bitzeni. Amei menuchot yanahaleni, nafshi yishovev yancheni, v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech beketz hamavet lo hirara, ki ata himadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Achta v'chesed yardfuni kol yamei chayai, v'shafti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside the still waters. God restores my soul. God guides me in the straight paths for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Today we stand in mourning of an American hero, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In a moment, I will speak to what she meant to all of us, but first, I would like to turn to her beloved family. The Justice was a mother, a grandmother, and as we all know, had one of the most extraordinary life partners in her beloved Marty. To each of you, to the Justice's colleagues, to her law clerks, and to her court family, the country mourns with you and sends you our deepest love and comfort. To be born into a world that does not see you, that does not believe in your potential, that does not give you a path for opportunity or a clear path for education, and despite this, to be able to see beyond the world you are in, to imagine that something can be different. That is the job of a prophet. And it is the rare prophet who not only imagines a new world, but also makes that new world a reality in her lifetime. This was the brilliance and vision of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The Torah is relentless in reminding, in instructing, in commanding that we never forget those who live in the shadows, those whose freedom and opportunity are not guaranteed. 36 times we are taught that we must never forget the stranger. 12 times we are told to care for the widow and the orphan. This is one of the most important commandments of the Torah. It is the Torah's call to action. And it is also the promise written into our Constitution. As Justice Ginsburg said, and I quote, "Think back to 1787. Who were we the people? They certainly weren't women. They surely weren't people held in human bondage. The genius of our Constitution is that now, over more than 200, sometimes turbulent years, that we has expanded and expanded." This was Justice Ginsburg's life's work, to insist that the Constitution deliver on its promise, that we, the people, would include all the people. She carried out that work in every chapter of her life. As an advocate arguing 6 times before this court for equal treatment for women and men, as a judge on the DC circuit, and as a justice on this court, and as a path-marking role model to women and girls of all ages, who now know that no office is out of reach for their dreams, whether that is to serve in the highest court of our land or closer to home for me as the rabbi of their community. Nothing could stop Justice Ginsburg's unflagging devotion to this project, not even cancer. Justice Ginsburg, midor lador, from generation to generation, we promise to carry forward your legacy. May you rest under the wings of the Shekhinah, knowing that you have tirelessly served us and this great country, the United States of America. Please rise. El male rachamim shochein b'maromim Hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina B'malot kedoshim u'teharim kezohar harakia mazhirim Et nishmat yitarucha batzir leia shelcha leolama Began Hayden to Hay Menuchata Ana Bala Rachamim Astireha Beseter Knafecha Leolamim Utzror Bitzror Achayim Anishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'tanuach B'shalom Amishkeva V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Holtzblatt, for those compelling words. Jane, Jim, the entire Ginsburg family, on behalf of all the justices, the spouses of the justices, and the entire Supreme Court family, I offer our heartfelt condolences on the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That loss is widely shared, but we know that it falls most heavily on the family. Justice Ginsburg's life was one of the many versions of the American dream. Her father was an immigrant from Odessa. Her mother was born 4 months after her family arrived from Poland. Her mother later worked as a bookkeeper in Brooklyn. Ruth used to ask, what is the difference between a bookkeeper in Brooklyn and a Supreme Court justice? Her answer, 1 generation. It has been said that Ruth wanted to be an opera virtuoso, but became a rock star instead. But she chose the law. Subjected to discrimination in law school and the job market because she was a woman, Ruth would grow to become the leading advocate fighting such discrimination in court. She was not an opera star, but she found her stage right behind me in our courtroom. There, she won famous victories that helped move our nation closer to equal justice under law, to the extent that women are now a majority in law schools, not simply a handful. Later, she became a star on the bench, where she sat for 27 years. Her 483 majority, concurring, and dissenting opinions will steer the court for decades. They are written with the unaffected grace of precision. Her voice in court and in our conference room was soft, but when she spoke, people listened. Among the words that best describe Ruth, tough, brave, a fighter, a winner, but also thoughtful, careful, compassionate, honest. When it came to opera, insightful, passionate. When it came to sports, clueless. Justice Ginsburg had many virtues of her own, but she also unavoidably promoted one particular one, humility in others. For example, on more than a few occasions, someone would approach or call me and describe some upcoming occasion or event that was important to them, and I knew what was coming. Could I come and speak? But no, instead, could I pass along an invitation to Justice Ginsburg and put in a good word? Many of you have seen the famous picture of Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg riding atop an elephant in India. It captured so much of Ruth. There she was, doing something totally unexpected, just as she had in law school, where she was not only one of the few women, but a new mother to boot. And in the photograph, she is riding with a dear friend, a friend with totally divergent views. There is no indication in the photo that either was poised to push the other off. For many years, of course, Ruth battled serious illness. She met each of those challenges with a combination of candid assessment and fierce determination. In doing so, she encouraged others who have their own battles with illness, including employees here in the court. And she emerged victorious, time and again, against all odds. But finally, the odds won out, and now Ruth has left us. I mentioned at the outset that Ruth's passing weighed most heavily on her family, and that is true. But the court was her family too. This building was her home too. Of course, she will live on in what she did to improve the law and the lives of all of us. And yet, still, Ruth is gone, and we grieve. Let us have a moment of silence for reflection. May she rest in peace.
The ceremony concluding, we just heard Chief Justice John Roberts note that Justice Ginsburg had dreamed of being an opera star. He said she was not an opera star, but she found her stage there in the Supreme Court.
She became a rock star.
She did. She became a rock star indeed there. And the Chief Justice was preceded by Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt, who called Justice Ginsburg an American hero. And she said, to be born into a world that does not see you and does not believe in your potential, and to imagine a world where it could be different, that is the job of a prophet.
Yeah, and the rabbi, her husband, it turns out, had clerked for Ruth Bader Ginsburg back in October of 2014. But I thought it was a short ceremony, but it was so beautifully done, starting with the rabbi, going to the Chief Justice, who had a sense of humor, who also gave us a strong sense of who she was, describing her as brave, tough, fighter, winner, but also thoughtful. And when it came to sports, clueless. He had such a nice sense of humor and such a nice touch. I would imagine that would be very comforting to the family. We said nobody has taken the loss bigger than they, but everybody is grieving for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, and he said the Supreme Court was her family, too.
Yes.
And one of the many things redeemable about both speeches was the fact that they recognize that there are many different American dreams and many different American lives. Chief Justice John Roberts saying that she lived one of many versions of the American dream.
Yeah, that's right. I noticed. I love the way he put that. Yeah, let's go back to Jan Crawford, who's at the Supreme Court. Jan, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, just seeing the Chief Justice there giving those remarks, Ruth is gone and we grieve, because the court was her family too. They were all close, and obviously this is an incredibly moving and difficult moment for them. But doesn't that speak of the best of our country, that people can come together as a family, these justices completely in disagreement on some of the controversial cases, but still see so much love and affection in that room as they pay their last respects to her.
Jan, you could almost hear in the remarks of Rabbi Holtzblatt the origins of some of the decisions and the arguments that Justice Ginsburg made. The Torah saying multiple times to honor the stranger, care for the stranger, and when she sought to expand we the people, she definitely meant we the people in every circumstance, every color, every creed, but also every level of income.
Right, and as you saw the Chief Justice kind of adding to those remarks, how that had led to great changes in the law that made all of us better, more equality for everyone. It really was a ceremony that, as Gail said, you felt like you knew her. And then you got some of those funny behind-the-scenes stories, too. Of course, the famous picture of Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg on that elephant in India, and how that was kind of part of who she was. She was going to do things her way, and they may be different than what people expected, but so effective.
We've all seen that very classic picture of her with her law school class, where she was certainly in the minority as a woman. And now to hear Chief Justice point out that now the majority of people in law schools are women. And I haven't heard one female lawyer that hasn't said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Absolutely. And when she started, she enrolled initially at Harvard Law School before she transferred to Columbia. She was one of 9 women in her class. I mean, just imagine that. And of course, there's the famous story where one of her professors asked why they were there. They'd taken a spot that would have gone otherwise to a man.
I like to imagine that those deans are regretting their decisions and their comments, and also those employers who wouldn't give her a job, although she was #1 in her class there at Columbia. Another memorable line from Justice Roberts was a story told in the Ginsburg family, which is, what's the difference between a clerk in Brooklyn and a Supreme Court justice? And her answer being 1 generation.
Yeah.
Right, and that goes to kind of Gail's point earlier. When you think about the generations that she has influenced and encouraged and inspired to find their own way, their own path to make a difference. It was, in her case, a generation, but think of how many generations she influenced and will continue to influence. It's those young girls who will be here today with their mothers and their grandmothers go on and find their own path to make their own impact on our country.
Influencing women and influencing the law, Jan, because as Justice Roberts pointed out, she wrote 483 majority, concurring, or dissenting opinions, and he made a point of underlining that number.
Right, and of course she was known for her precision of language in those opinions. She was known for getting her work done on time. Even this past spring, when she was in the hospital being treated for her illness, she was there with her law books and briefs, doing the oral arguments by telephone from the hospital room. She was the hardest working justice, and she turned those opinions around quickly, and they were perfection, just the precision of her language, which is a way that she was able to then change the law and build potentially coalitions down the road because it was about the law, not rhetoric.
Yeah. Thank you, Jan. The casket now will be moved out onto the portico at the front steps, where the public will be able to view it over the next 2 days.
And people have already started lining up. I love how the Chief Justice said, we all knew about her health challenges and that she had emerged victorious time and time again.
Yeah.
It was not meant to be. He said, Ruth is gone. May she rest in peace.
Yeah.
We all feel that.
Yes.
Our coverage will continue on our 24-hour streaming network, CBSN. You can watch it at cbsnews.com or on our CBS News app. There will be more on the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg coming up on your local news on this CBS station, and tonight on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Anthony Mason with Gail King and Tony DeCopel, CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to cbsnews.com.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something